Well, welcome everybody to the Big Data Beards virtual race to Splunk's .conf 20. For today's race, we travel virtually, of course, to Italy, to Ferrari's home track, lovingly referred to as Imola. And today's race is sponsored by our friends at Splunk, and I am joined today by Tim Tully, the Senior Vice President and CTO at Splunk. Tim, I got to ask you, do you have any experience in racing either in real life or maybe virtually?
I do really enjoy playing racing games on my PlayStation and my gaming PC at home. I've gotten really, really far too deep into gaming PCs and PCs in general in the last, say, year to year and a half. And I have a really fully RGB setup to play mostly the F1 racing game. Mm-hmm. I've got the Logitech G923 racing wheel and the pedals and all that. So I really love driving video games. In terms of real life, not a lot. You know, I've spent a little bit of time driving McLarens around at Sonoma Speedway, which is just super thrilling. But, you know, not a lot. I mostly sit in front of the computer and code as much as I possibly can. So not as much time racing as I'd like.
Well, see, that's exactly what you want to hear from a CTO. I like that. Well, just like .conf is virtual, our racing today is also virtual. And I'm curious, from your perspective, when you think about conf this year and it being virtual, what are the things that you're most excited about in this year's conference?
You know, obviously the product announcements that we're going to have this year are just going to be stellar, as they always are. We have some really big announcements, not just with respect to the platform, but also with respect to what we can do with machine learning, observability. You know, I don't want to give away too much of it, but we have some really fantastic UI developments that we're going to share, suite developments that we're going to share. And you know, as always, we always saved our best for conf. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
That's awesome.
The other aspect is just the production quality of the show. I think what we're doing this year to make it completely virtual is pretty elaborate from the tech setup. I'm actually pretty impressed with the production from the marketing and comms team. Some of the stuff that we're going to do in terms of creating these virtual environments in the backgrounds behind us when we're speaking is using a lot of let's just leave it at gaming technology is the best way I can describe it. But I will get into it during my keynote and talk about how awesome it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, I encourage to our listeners and watchers out there to check out the data playground. This virtual race to .conf is going to be covered in one of those awesome breakouts using that cool technology that you mentioned. So, Tim, I know one of the things that's been a hallmark for you has been you've been a champion of diversity and inclusion at Splunk. I'm curious, are there any sessions at Conf this year that are really focused on that important topic?
There's one session in particular that I participated in. I know there's other sessions, but the one that I'm involved in has myself, Jeremy Rischel, who runs all of engineering for us in the products and technology team, Melissa Bindi, who runs one of the largest teams in Jeremy's org, and Naveed Rezvani, who's another VP in Jeremy's team. And we got together to talk about diversity, not just within Splunk, but across tech as a whole. And so I thought it was a really great session with some really fantastic questions and answers from us. So definitely check it out if you have time.
Absolutely. Well, we can't wait to see you on the big stage of .conf this year. And the time has come, though, for you to kick us off for this edition of the Big Data Beards virtual race to .conf. Tim, would you please do the honors for us?
Sure. I'd love to. Splunkers, splunk your engines.
Welcome, everyone, to the beautiful Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Idino Ferrari, also known as Imola. Brett, curious, do you know why it's called Imola?
Well, Corey, it's because it's located in the town or near the town of Imola. Somebody didn't do their Wikipedia research last night.
Well, thank goodness for you keeping me honest. Well, I tell you what, nobody needs to help the Splunk team as they are rounding out 1 through 4 in the qualifying positions for today's race. This is the 4th race in the Big Data Beards virtual race to .conf and the 2nd from the beautiful continent of Europe. And we're excited to welcome our friends in EMEA to the race. Now, I want to check in with you, Brett. What do you think are some of the keys to winning this race today?
Yeah, well, first, Corey, fun fact that this is one of the few auto circuit racetracks that has a counterclockwise directional. So I think the first key to winning the race is you got to go the right direction. And then you got to go fast, you got to turn well, and again, like always, if you cross the finish line first, you're normally going to win the race.
Oh, it's great to hear the keys from somebody with so much insight. Do appreciate that. Now, it is kind of interesting. Splunk in positions 1 through 4, they're one of a couple of teams here that have more than one car entered into the field. You think we're going to see any of that shake and bake action?
And I hope so. I want to see some slingshots and just some good, fun driving today.
Well, here we go. The racers are away. They're bunching up. They're all getting right behind that Splunk for IT car, getting ready to hit that green light as they cross the start. And we're racing now at Imola. Now, the teams are coming into this first turn. It is quite a straightaway. You've got to shed some speed as you come into this first turn. And this is, again, where with cold tires, you could lose it.
Yeah, Corey, there's a few really sharp turns that come up right in the beginning here. So until you warm up those tires, you really want to take it at 3/4 speed, or else you're going to fall off into that dirt right there.
Absolutely. We see some really aggressive turns in there, grabbing some of those apexes. So and now we've got one of the lead cars. That's Splunk Enterprise Security falling way back as he comes out of turn 3. Oh, that's too bad to see, losing that position. But it was good for me as I step into third place there, trying to track down those Splunk racers. Now, I am excited to welcome some folks in from the races that maybe haven't joined us from EMEA. Glad to have you on board for the races today. And I want to make sure that everybody's aware of the massive Boss of the Knock and Boss of the Sock happening at .conf this year. You need to make sure that you're signing up for those. You can visit conf.splunk.com to register for Splunk Conf, but you can also register for those botnet activities. And spoiler alert, there's going to be a scenario that talks about and uses the data from iRacing and from the Big Data Beards virtual race to .conf.
Yeah, Corey. So not only do you get to see the data that we're using to make ourselves better drivers each day, you get to play with it yourself and explore the question, or explore the data and ask the questions yourself.
Absolutely. Well, there's our entrance into the first chicane, the major chicane. That thing is absolutely crazy. It's called the Variante Alta.
And there's a little bump there by Mclaren into the Aero car there, but Aero car was able to maintain and is still ahead of the Mclaren car.
Absolutely. Well, I have a feeling there's going to be quite a bit of bumping as Tom West just makes a move on Kyle Prinz, who gets a little too aggressive in the brakes. I have a feeling those two boys may be bumping, trying to fight for that 6th position. Now, let's do a quick turn in. We're going to actually go talk with our first guest. He's big time into racing, even bigger into Splunk, but he's leading up a lot of the conversations between Splunk and Mclaren, and we'll check in with him now.
Well, thanks, Corey. And I'm here with James Hodge, who is the Chief Technical Advisor for Splunk. James, what's going on? How are you doing today?
Hey, nice to speak to you again. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Doing great. It's a great race, another fun virtual Race to Conf day. So, James, I wanted to start out just by understanding what exactly the role of Chief Technical Advisor is for Splunk.
So I think personally it's the coolest role at Splunk. One of the reasons I get to work with Mclaren Formula 1 and esports. I mean, that has just been incredible. But more what we're really looking at doing is how do we engage our customers and the executives at our customers to talk to them about the transformation they're going through. Kind of we're at the beginning of this data age. So how can they use data as a competitive edge? And it's something that it can be really scary and difficult. Needs a different style of leadership. So my team go in and help advise our top customers on this.
That's really cool. It sounds like a really exciting job to be able to talk to customers, talk about this emerging data age, but also have some fun too. And you mentioned, partnering with Mclaren, and you've really been at the center of this partnership. And there's a lot of press lately around the Mclaren and Splunk partnership. So what are you most excited about with Splunk partnering with Mclaren?
I think the thing I'm really excited about is our cultures. One of the reasons we are really kind of pleased that we partnered with Mclaren was we're both kind of in this fearless pursuit of better, as Mclaren would call it. And we're really trying hard to look at how we can change the world, change cultures internally, perspectives, and kind of be driven by data. It's kind of cheesy dad pun when you talk about racing driven by data, but it's really true. And kind of for me with Mclaren, that meant everything to them. They've got such a rich heritage, a brand, this pursuit of excellence, and then being able to kind of help refine that and add more data to their decision making to kind of see some improvements both on and off track It's been such an amazing first year with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, when we were talking about racing and the performance that's needed for these races, data can be very critical. So I just want to get your take on kind of how is data helping impact McLaren from an in-race performance perspective?
Well, if I get just some of the data within Formula One, so kind of not just the Splunk view, just the Formula One view. We've got cars going around track. They have around about, during practice, 300 sensors on the car. So that's 600 sensors across the two cars that then get streamed to a bus that's going around the circuit, which then hits the garage. There are two 32U racks, if I still remember my rack heights, sat in the garage in kind of a really hostile environment, like carbon dust, dirt, and everything kind of filtering through all the fans.
A little rugged, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's enough to give anyone IT administrator kind of a heart attack seeing them. That then gets streamed back as fast as possible back to the McLaren Technology Center in Woking, where they actually start to process that data through their kind of big computing grids there. They look at things like track position, decision making, to then go in a really calm environment, to then send that data back to trackside onto the pit wall so someone can then go and interact with the driver to go and give them the next bit of information they need to go and do their job. That just sums up just Formula One data. So there's so much opportunity for just IT operations. That link is mission critical. If that's not working, then a track can't actually go out onto circuit. That's a really public failure. And that could just be maybe that those racks aren't spinning up, so the car can't go on circuit, all the way through to how do they go and make the right decision in real time on a track.
No, that's really exciting. So just curious, what do you think's next with the partnership between Splunk and McLaren?
Well, some of the things I'm really exciting about is moving towards more kind of edge computing. So we are in one of the upcoming Formula One races, we're starting to embed some more monitoring inside of those trackside rigs to be able to look at the performance of it so they can have more assurance on how they're working. And the other bit that's really exciting, I think is quite topical for our conversation now, is esports. The esports arena is just exploding, and it's giving this wonderful opportunity that we can start to do analytics in esport and then look at bringing that across to kind of real live Formula One racing. And that, I think is, you can probably see my t-shirt, it's my favorite Splunk t-shirt, Control F1. And that's what we're really trying to do for McLaren, just to give them all the data at their fingertips so they can just make that right decision. The difference in kind of first and 10th on the grid is a fraction of a percent. There is very few industry where you look at your competitors and say all that, the only difference between us is the fraction of a percent.
That makes sense. So we're going to hear more about Splunk and McLaren and esports from James in a little bit. But let's hand it back to Corey to check in on the race.
Brett, great conversation there with James Hodge. Always good to catch up with him. But I tell you what, while you guys were talking, lots going on in the background with lots of contact, lots of wrecks, lots of leader and changes to the leaderboard. It is surprising to see how many wrecks we're having across the course.
Yeah, I mean, we had Westy spin out multiple times. We had the Dell car spin out. We had Arrow run into a wall. Then we had Buttercup lose placement as well. So 4 major cars that had major accidents that took a toll on the leaderboard.
Absolutely. Well, we're seeing these cars get parts pulled off. They're having lots of changes to the aerodynamics and driving capabilities. So I have a feeling as these wrecks continue to unfold, they're going to actually make it harder to continue to drive. And there you can see another one of those cars losing its hood, losing its bonnet, I think they call it in the UK. And oh, look here. Oh, this is too bad. We've got a car that's going a lap down, impeding the progress of our leader, and that leader loses their spot trying to make a pass on the outside to that car. Now, it looks like it's a good thing for me as I get to move into second place, but this is another one of those situations where having 14 cars on the track on a course that's tight turns, quite surprising how the action can unfold.
Yeah, Corey, I'm actually really surprised about where these accidents and where these spinouts are taking place. You would think that where the chicanes are, which are turns 11 and 12, would really be where the accidents happen, but we're seeing them at 9 and 10, and then the 14 and 15 going into the front straightaway. So it's really surprising that the chicanes are not really influencing the leaderboard today.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we're seeing that pass too. We're coming into turns 9 and 10, Acque Mineral turns. This is absolutely saddening to see that leader car being pushed off the track, but good for the folks behind him who wanted to get a little bit ahead. But the action here continues, and we've got cars pulling into the pits for some repairs. But one thing that is to be talked about here is the fact that iRacing allows something called fast repairs. So while if you can get to the pit under the car's own driving capability and get those repairs, it's great. And once you're in the pit, fast repairs allow you to have major damage repaired almost instantaneously. So we won't really need fuel and tires, but you can have those repairs happen almost instantaneously.
I really wish my mechanic had fast repairs because I don't like waiting 5 or 6 hours for my car to get fixed.
Absolutely. We'll see there. We've got a car with major damage getting repaired in seconds, and he's going to be back out on the track, hopefully not going a lap down so he can continue to be competitive there. But let's go into our first tech overview today.
Thanks, team. Welcome to today's tech overview, where we take a behind-the-scenes look at the technology that makes today's virtual race to conf possible. A big thank you to today's sponsor, Splunk. Now let's take a dive in. Today we're going to take a look at the data that's actually being pulled out of the iRacing platform. Now I know we've taken a bit of a look at this before, but I just want to show what kind of values you can get out of the iRacing platform. Now we've also mentioned that there can be 268 different values that you can have. I'm referencing the PyIR SDK that was built by Kudu, and he was nice enough to provide a key value chart where we could see what exactly each key was, as well as the values and the units of measurement that were happening there. This really helped us for things like air temperature, where at a quick glance, we may not be sure if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius. He was kind enough to do that for us so we could make sure that we were visualizing the data in the best way possible. We'll post a link to this as well, so if you want to take a look at it, you can dive right in and see all the different values and units of measurement that there are. Obviously, there's quite a bit of it, and frankly it was a bit overwhelming to take a look at this and see what exactly we thought would be useful and not. So the first thing we did was we actually moved it all into a couple different dictionaries. And what we did was we sorted this based upon what we thought was kind of the idea of what it was. So like whether the key value pair was a camera, we would place it in the camera dictionary. And those would be things like what camera was being played back in the race, the camera state, the replay session number. We also described out the compute dictionary, where we were looking at things like the CPU utilization and the frame rate of the race itself. We also included the environment, so if you wanted environmentals, so you could think of things like, air density and air pressure as it relates back to your racing. We also did the overall metadata of each race. So whether that's, what place your car's in, the time clock of the race, those kind of things, whether, what number lap you're on, whether or not your car's in the garage, all those kind of race metadata things. As you can see, there's quite a bit of race metadata built into that. Track dictionary was something where there was only a few items around the track, so we didn't really use a ton of those. However, vehicle dictionary is where most of our values came out of, because frankly, that's where most of the excitement is in the race, is seeing how these cars can interact with each other. And as you can see, there are quite a few variables within this. One of my favorite ones is the temperature of the tires. And what we're looking at here is the left front temperature of the left, middle, and center of the tires, or the brake calipers in this particular one. However, it is pulling tires as well, which is absolutely fascinating that we're getting that level of granularity within each of these pieces of the car. However, there are quite a bit there. Now, what we did to make it a little bit easier for everybody was we created that normalized dictionary that we showcased yesterday. And it's right here in the Python script again. We can expand that out. And we pulled in the stuff that we thought was most relevant and most valuable for our race as well. Now, we'll dive in tomorrow a little bit around how do we get that payload into the HTTP event collector, and what does that data look like in our Splunk environment. So if you have any questions around the HTTP event collector, stay tuned to tomorrow's race where we'll discuss that. Again, thank you to Splunk, today's race sponsor. We'll pass it back to you on the track.
Hey, thanks, Kyle, for that great insight. But hey, look here, Kyle. You failed to leverage one of Brett's keys to the race. Brett, what did he do wrong here?
You didn't listen to the keys to the race.
going the wrong direction is not. It is one of the keys that Brett laid out early on how to win the race. Well, while Kyle was giving us that great update, we saw Buttercup continue to lead and to continue to build a gap between him and me, and I'm able to actually continue to build a little bit of a gap between third place as the Splunk ES car continues to struggle a little bit there. Again, somebody else not listening to the keys to the race from Brett Roberts, going the wrong direction on this. What is an odd direction for a course in EMEA?
Which, I mean, Corey, I've put a lot of seconds into developing my keys of the race, and for them to not listen to it just hurts.
Absolutely. Well, the punishment for not following the keys to the race is losing positions rapidly and also having your car get torn apart, which continues to make it harder and harder to drive. As those cars lose their hoods, they lose the front fairings, they become harder to turn, they become less stable at speed. And at Imola, you do have quite a few high-speed turns where you can see that Splunk ES car getting loose there as it comes into the back turns.
Yeah, Corey, and then some strategy has to come into factor. Do you take it off? Do you do a fast repair? Do you try and just power through with some, muddle steering? And we see here that the Splunk security cars decided to go in for a fast repair.
It looks like Simon Yep, the pilot of that car, decided that the best option was to get a car that he could drive fast. He's got a lot of skill, a lot of experience in iRacing, so I think he'll be able to make up some time pretty rapidly. Now, we do want to clue everybody in that if you're watching this race and you're getting excited about .conf and you want to go deeper into all the things that the Big Data Beard team has done to make this race possible, the technology we created and how we're integrating iRacing with Splunk, and if you want to see our deployment and get a chance to get hands-on with the data, I highly encourage you to check out the Big Data Beards session at .conf. It's under the Splunk for You track. Its track is 1337 is the ID, but it's called the Big Data Beards Virtual Race to .conf, and it's happening on Tuesday, October 20th at 2 o'clock p.m., and that's Pacific time in the U.S. And here we see Westy getting aggressive, attacking those apexes, but man, just barely being able to save it as he comes out of that dirt back onto the track.
Yeah, Corey, I think you got a little bit of air there on that turn.
It is a little interesting to see them go airborne, but those cars are so stiff, designed to clearly not be driven over large obstacles like that. They do get airborne when they get bounced. Here you see Westy getting into some more lap traffic, trying to... Oh, and it wasn't even lap traffic. He just took a position there from the Mclaren team. Also want to take a few minutes to remind everybody that for every one of these races... Oh, that's too bad to see Westy losing it down there in the Minerale. Losing that position that he just gained to McLaren. Oh, Red River going off again right in front of him. McLaren's car looking sort of like Mad Max here. No front clip. All you can see is those air intakes feeding that beautiful McLaren engine.
But Westy is coming back for, and let's see if he can actually make the pass and have it stick this time.
Absolutely. He's going to fight his way back. Well, as I was saying, I want to make sure that everybody's aware we are having a podcast every single day. We have the races. We also have podcasts going with it. And today we get a chance to sit down with Albert Bichetti. He's the VP of the security markets team at Splunk. And we get to talk to him about how Splunk has become an absolute leader in security and how Splunk is absolutely helping customers solve unique challenges that have been caused by this pandemic and the migration in workforce and the increase in surface areas where attackers can get in. So it's going to be a great podcast. Make sure you're checking that out. You can visit our website at bigdatabeard.com, or you can find us in your favorite podcast app. Love seeing this racing right here between McLaren and Westy. Let's see if he can hold it. Oh, he gets that inside line, makes the pass clean. Westy, congratulations on another great executed pass right there through some tough turns.
Now we have Kyle making a turn and trying to make his pass too.
Oh, he actually got past, and that is too bad. We hate to see Kyle lose a position to that Splunk Signal FX car. He was holding it down for so long. But hey, let's go check in with Kyle and see what the data tells us about why that pass looks so easy for that Splunk Signal FX car.
Corey, it looks like Splunk App Dev is just pulling away from me on that one, so I thought it'd be a good time to take this opportunity and see exactly what was going on with our Splunk dashboards today and what I could have done better on that one. I've gone ahead and logged into our instance, pulled up the lap performance with App Dev versus myself, grabbed the lap, and we're taking a look at the speed metrics. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this as well, and let's see what's going on with these graphs here. Me in the dark blue, you can see that my speed ended up dropping down quite a bit lower, which then gave Splunk App Dev the advantage on that. And then Splunk App Dev was able to just pull away a little bit further and longer from me, furthering that distance. Let's take a look at the braking patterns and see how I did there. All right. Now with the braking patterns, we have this little bit right here, which you can see where it was a bit harder on the brakes for me. We've gone ahead and loaded up a deeper zoom. And you can see where I was just punching the brakes a little bit too hard, maybe being a little bit too aggressive in my braking and not letting the car's natural flow through that. So a takeaway from me for this would be to go ahead and loosen up on the brakes a little bit, maybe have that car momentum pull through it, and see if I can connect those turns a bit better to shave a few seconds off my lap time. Back to you on the track.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Sorry you had to be the subject of your own data deep dive in the race, but we're glad to have you unfolding in the data for us what's happening in the race. Well, we see in the action that happened while Kyle was with us, Buttercup continues to build a gap, and I'm able to continue to build a nice lead between us and the rest of the field. And that positions 3 through 7 still super tight. There's going to be some great racing action there in the middle of the pack.
Now, Corey, you decide to go with the BMW over the McLaren. Tell us why you chose this specific car and also the inspiration behind the paint theme.
Absolutely. Well, really the main reason we wanted to drive a car that wasn't the McLaren wasn't because we don't like the McLaren car by any means. It's we wanted a little bit of diversity in our data set to understand the differences in the GT3 cars that we might be able to pull out that detail in our data collection. So really it was for some diversity. Now, I actually started in my practicing as I just started getting rolling with iRacing, trying to use the Ford GT40 GT3 class car. But candidly, it's a pretty dated platform and really wasn't competitive with some of the cars like the McLaren here today. And so we ended up choosing the BMW because it's a pretty easy car to drive and looked like it would be pretty competitive with McLaren a lot of the specs perspective. The paint scheme is actually just a throwback to the Gulf Oil paint scheme of the 60s and 70s that found its way across a lot of racing. And candidly, that blue and orange just means racing to me.
That's cool, Corey. Now, you mentioned the Ford, you mentioned that you obviously drove the BMW. What are the trade-offs between the BMW? You said it's easier to drive, but what's the trade-off versus the McLaren?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the BMW is a bit easier to control into the corners, doing some trail braking. The McLaren has a bit of an understeer, but the McLaren is just flat out faster. It's faster on the acceleration side, and it's definitely faster in the top speed. But really, given that we're doing a lot of road courses, I felt like that I felt like it was the best car out there besides the McLaren for me to try to drive as a kind of a diverse data set. And we see here Buttercup using that lead to protect himself and maintain first position. Let's go check in with Brett and James for the second part of their interview.
Hey, so we're back with James to hear more about Splunk, McLaren, and all the exciting things that this partnership is bringing, not just to racing and performance, but also to esports. And James, you mentioned earlier a little bit about esports. I want to dive into that because you talked about this whole new idea about bringing data to esports, and you guys have been doing that with McLaren, and you've been doing these things called virtual Grand Prix events. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely can. So for those of you who remember at the beginning of the year in Australia, the teams almost went racing. And then unfortunately, due to the pandemic, real racing was put on pause. And the virtual Grand Prix series was started. So this was a mix of real racing drivers and kind of celebrity guest drivers racing with the Codemasters 2019 game. To give you kind of the impact of that, there were 21.8 million digital views. I think an outreach around about 27 million was the global TV audience. There are about 900 pieces of press coverage on this. I think it hit kind of the YouTube kind of trending lists, the kind of social impressions. I think almost 700 million social impressions behind this. To say that it was a piece of interest for anyone that was interested in Formula One and esports is an understatement. And that provided an opportunity. What people don't maybe realize was that the Codemasters game, the Formula One game, allowed us to be able to send out telemetry between 10 and 60 hertz, around about 2 to 250 data points. When we kind of took the McLaren team through what you could do with this data, I think Randeep, the head of race strategy, kind of almost felt that they were getting more real-time data from that than they actually do on trackside. What we're able to then, everything from kind of your tire, inside and outside pressure, what surface your tire is on, each individual tire. So kind of maybe when Lando was driving, that was pretty much saying tarmac. When maybe I was testing things out, I probably 50-50 tarmac to, let's just say, another surface.
Yeah, you were more on rocks and grass than you were on asphalt, right? Or on track.
Yeah, and actually, the data I can't wait to find out is from the virtualracer.conf. One of the circuits, you can definitely get airtime. And I'm really intrigued to see what the data says, whether it has airtime as one of the categories.
That's funny.
And so we took some of the data and we were able to start to kind of hone in on performance. And the one that really did it for me was when we had Lando and Pierre Aubameyang, who is the captain for Arsenal Football Club. He came as a guest driver. Yeah, he's a bit of an esports fan, but Monaco was the race he was going to be racing in. And that's not necessarily a simple race to do.
Yeah, it's not a forgiving track, is it?
No, and actually you could see by the G-force spikes on the graph, you could almost have if we knew the cost of the carbon fiber, we'd be able to say how much cost each driver would have incurred had damage been turned on going around that race that weekend. So what we're able to do is then take the telemetry, get on a call with Lando, Pierre, and Randeep, the head of race strategy, and almost take him through where he's kind of lifting the pedal in the wrong places, where he's not putting enough steering input, and really starting to see kind of how to improve it. And we're now taking that to the Mclaren esports team and starting to look at how we can help coach their professional drivers, and then maybe even look at how we assess kind of the new wave of next generation esports drivers coming in.
And this can all be done virtually.
All virtually, and that's the best thing about it. I mean, to give you kind of audience size for esports, for just the racing side, total audience, kind of 2018, you're looking around about 400 million people. To predicted 2022, 645 million people. And the thing I love about esports is it's really accessible. You can actually translate kind of esports to real life racing. They had the McLaren G-Shock Challenge last year, or the Shadow Challenge, ended up kind of finding their next simulator driver and how they're actually going to go and race that, a guy called Kevin Siggy. And he actually is really performing well in kind of physical driving as well. And all you need is a PC, Xbox, PlayStation, the game, and maybe a steering wheel if you want to upgrade your set.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a wide variety of driving today, aren't we? And maybe McLaren will pick up one or two people for their team from this race. Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Probably not, though, right?
I think we see the skill of McLaren drivers as they have to kind of weave in and out of, I wouldn't say we're the celebrity drivers, but we're the non-professional drivers.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying celebrity either. Now, you mentioned airtime as being a really interesting data point. I'm curious, what's another interesting, or what's your other favorite data point from all the stuff that you guys are bringing out of the esports sims?
I think it probably has to be braking.
Okay.
And actually realizing the difference between kind of where Lando or Ben, one of the kind of esports drivers, approaches a corner to someone like maybe, I don't know, myself. And just seeing how I kind of go into think like Silverstone and Beckett, whether I'm kind of slamming on the brake way too early, doing a hope and pray at the end so I can be able to whip it round. And actually just being able to compare where I am versus how maybe a professional driver is driving it, and then being able to use that to change my behavior, to start to kind of get better and better lap times. I think braking, actually, I think for me, is the one that I've been able to use the most to improve my times.
No, that's really. I was gonna say speed, but you gave such a great answer on braking that I'm gonna go the opposite now and say braking probably is a lot more important, right? James, thanks so much for your time today. This is just yet another example of Splunk's data to everything platform. It's really exciting. And Corey, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk about the conclusion of the race.
Well, thanks, Brett and James. Great to hear about all the collaboration between McLaren and Splunk, really using that Splunk data to everything platform to bring data to racing in really a unique way. Looking forward to more of that during .conf. I'm sure we'll see it. Well, the story here is this Buttercup car just continues to build the lead and to build the gap, fighting our way through some lap traffic, trying to stay safe. But honestly, with a 35-second lead over me in second place, I don't think they're going to have too much trouble holding on to it. And the gap really between second and third, pretty surmountable right now. It's pretty tough to be pulling over 30 seconds in the last 2 minutes of the race. So going to be a challenge. But I see we're having a battle of the beards back here with Westy and Kyle. And oh, no, Westy gets off the track. Looks like a little tangle up with the Dell car. It's too bad to see. You know, one of the things that you start to see happening late in the race is the tires get warm, Brett. And warm tires are clearly very different than cold tires.
Yeah, I would say that they're the exact opposite of cold tires, Corey.
Incredible insight. Really, it's the ability to have that extra grip on track allows those turns to be a little bit more aggressive. And candidly, you know, for a lot of the folks, they've probably been on this track not too many times, so you're starting to learn the turns and your turn-in points. Westy's struggling there. As he's gone off track, those tires do cool off. Maybe got some sand or dirt in those tires, but it is always a challenge whenever you get anything that isn't just a nice, warm, sticky tire in play.
Yeah, and obviously as we're getting closer to the end of the race, these tires have a lot more wear to them as well, so that has to be taken into consideration as well.
Absolutely. Well, we tried to be considerate of all of our drivers as we set this iRacing up to make sure that the setup was easy enough for all levels of skill to enjoy themselves, but challenging enough to make folks think through, you know, how they're racing and how aggressive they're going to be in the back parts of these the race time frames.
Yeah, Corey, we talked about fast repairs earlier. One of the things that a lot of people have turned off are tire replacements during those repairs to cut down on precious seconds. So that really does impact these last couple of laps.
Absolutely. Well, the checkered flag is out, and it looks like Buttercup is going to be the winner here today. No surprise. He's just put on an absolute clinic at Imola, and that BMW is 30 seconds behind or more, but going to make its way down, and I'm going to be super happy to take what looks like second place there, assuming we can get through these turns without too much drama.
Don't want any drama, Corey.
Yeah, that should be a key to your race. Have as little drama as possible as you approach the finish line.
That's too easy. It's too obvious. My keys are very specific.
Oh, yes. Built on many, many years of racing heritage and experience. Love that. Super excited to have second place in there. John Hayward going to pilot that Splunk Signal FX car into a third place finish. You know, Splunk was excited to have 4 cars in the top 4 as we got into qualifying. Here, just avoiding some lap traffic, Splunk is going to finish with 2 in the top 3.
Yeah, so yesterday, Splunk, a great finish at Silverstone. Today at Imola, another great turnout for the Splunk team.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good. It's a Splunk-sponsored race, and we got Splunk in 2 spots on the podium. Let's go check in with Tom West as to what he saw in the data on why the race turned out the way it did.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another post-race data analysis, this time at the Imola circuit. And today what I want to do is, first of all, give a big shout-out to our very own Corey, finishing in a very impressive second place. And so we want to have a look and see what he managed to do differently this time compared to previous to try and get such a brilliant position. So if we have a look at our dashboards, the first thing that jumps out is the fact that he's got 0 incident points, meaning that he stayed on track for the entirety of the race, no collisions with anyone, just keeping himself to himself and driving a very clean race. And so we talked previously about how clean races produces consistency, and that's really obvious here. If we have a look at his best lap time, for instance, it's 6th fastest throughout the field, with all 4 Splunk racers and myself driving a faster lap than Corey. But Corey's difference between his best lap time and his average lap time is less than 2 seconds. To put that into context, the difference between the best and average for the leader was nearly 3 seconds. So it really does highlight how a clean race produces a more consistent race. And if we have a look at some of the positional changes that we had today, what we can see is is Corey qualifying in 4th position and just making his way up to second and just staying and managing to keep that position throughout the entirety of the race. And we have a look at some of our other racers. We've got the Splunk App Dev racer, managing to make his way all the way up into first position, and then just having a big incident that goes and knocks him way down the field, and playing catch up from there, eventually finishing in third position, which was a very, very good achievement, given that at one point he was all the way down in seventh. We have a look at some of the other vehicles, and we've got Splunk Security catching Corey up, getting up to third position, and then right as soon as he goes and does so, another big incident knocks him down the field, and that seems to be fairly consistent. Again, if we look at my data, getting up into fourth, just getting behind Corey, and then going far down the field as well. So it really does show, just in positions, that it's not about driving the fastest lap, it's about driving a consistent race that really does have a big impact in your overall position. But that's what we've gone and found with our data. Have you found something that's more interesting? Do you know of a better story that you can pull out with the dashboards that we've got? Please let us know. This is Westy signing off with today's, and thank you very much to Splunk as being our race sponsor for today. Back to you at the studio.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's great to see what the data can tell us really about performance. And it is interesting that a safe race is a good race, and certainly a better turnout than I was expecting. Big congrats to the Splunk team for taking a win here and a podium in position 3, but just a general showing, top 10 overall. Really, really nice for a team in their own sponsored race here at Imola. Be sure to stay tuned. We're about to go check in with the team who won the race, all 3 podium finishers, and the Big Data Beard's going to talk to them about what it felt like to be in this race today and how it felt to win in a great, great field.
Well, thanks, Corey. That was an amazing race at Imola, the home track of Ferrari. And I want to give a big congratulations to our winners. First place was Jason Syme. Second place was Corey Minton. And third place was John Hayward. Congratulations. Now,
Thank you.
This was a very challenging track, a lot of turns, some switchbacks. How does it feel to win such a challenging race? Jason?
It feels great. And stealing the words of our second place, exuberant second place finisher, Corey, amongst everything going on these days, this is literally a breath of fresh air. Winning is always just the cherry on the top. So great time today.
Yeah, I think we have audio of Corey crossing the finish line, and I have never heard so much excitement and high-pitched screams coming from him. So I think he was pretty excited.
Octaves that came out of that man's mouth. Yeah, the octaves that came out of that man's mouth.
I'm not proud of it. But I'll be honest. I'm really proud of winning. I did not expect it with the kind of talent that we've got in this field. Like, it was totally unexpected. So to hold on after, what it was, some unfortunate events and some of the early, folks going off on cold tires, being able to hold on was so exciting, and I just couldn't help myself. I was just like literally watching the relative screen, waiting for somebody to catch me and take it away from me. And I was able to hold on, and I was very, very proud. Thank you.
No, we can tell that you're still very excited, and the adrenaline's coursing through you. So that's great. Congratulations. John, this is your first time on the podium, third place. Congratulations. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, good. It was a good laugh, good fun. I've enjoyed all the practice up to this, and this race was good fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, I think that a few of us have been doing this for a few months, a couple of years. We all have different setups. Tell us a little bit, Jason, about your setup for iRacing today. What were you using, and kind of how is that working for you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a dedicated Dell PC for iRacing only. I use all Fanatec gear, so it's kind of the one-stop shop. I have everything bolted together on the Fanatec sim. And then I use Oculus Rift for virtual reality for a more immersive experience. And I went back and forth on the triple monitors versus VR, and what you lose in resolution in VR, you gain in immersion. So it's great. It works great. It's hard to miss apexes when you have VR, because you can really, especially in open wheel cars. It's great.
And Corey, what about you? I think we've heard in the past a little bit about your setup.
Yeah.
What modifications, or were there any modifications today to help you go from third to second?
Man, honestly, I turned off crew chief. I think part of the thing that was happening was I was getting maybe too much information about what was going on around me. And really, given the way that these races are set up with, we really don't have a lot of fueling concerns. We don't have tire and wear. It's really about just putting in consistent laps and avoiding traffic. And what I'm able to get out of the relative screen, I just turned all that noise off and just tried to focus on running good laps. I will say I do have our handy dandy iRacing monitor over on a iPhone screen mounted to my gear shift knob, so I can see if we're getting good data in from the races. So in real time, I'm kind of keeping an eye on making sure that we're getting data, because that's, we're having fun, don't get me wrong, but the data is a story, and so able to keep real time eyes on that's pretty fun.
So my takeaway from that is you were sick of hearing Brett has spun off on the track again.
I mean, the funny thing is that it's like it doesn't really matter. I'm not that good. Like if somebody spun off, I'm probably going to run into them. I just got lucky this time that I didn't, so it's all good.
Awesome. And John, what are you? What's your setup for this race?
So I'm running a Fanatec DD2, Husingveld pedals, and 3 34-inch monitors.
Wow, sounds awesome.
Quite a bit of viewpoints there, yeah. Now, this has been a pretty challenging track. It's quite technical. What kind of was the most challenging part of the track for you? What was the part you were most nervous about of it? Because obviously you overcame it, but what was the part you were most nervous about?
I'll answer.
Jason?
So, yeah, sure. It is a very technical track. I think probably the most precarious part is I can't remember the name of the corner at the moment. Sorry, I know other tracks better. There's a right-hander before an uphill that's going to drive into the chicane, and you're very easy to be trail braking offline, which can ultimately spin the car before the uphill. Plus, within iRacing, you get time penalties if you go too far off. So that's a very tricky section. I'd also venture to say the first 2 corners, turn 1 and 2, that initial chicane is pretty tricky. If you go offline there, you lose a lot of speed going in down to turn 4. So those are pretty tricky areas. The rest of it, fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Corey, what was the trickiest part for you?
Absolutely the first chicane. Like you're coming so hot off that straightaway. I mean, you're just about hitting the top speed of the car there, and you're 165 miles an hour grabbing brakes, and you basically have to get down into second or third gear, and you can't really be in the brakes anymore as you come through the apex, because you've just got to get shifted back to the other side. And it is a real challenge. And honestly, that's where, like, most of the folks that went off that had like race ending offs, that's where it happened. So that was one where my lap times were not super fast, and candidly, I guarantee you it was because of that corner. I was taking it super conservative.
One thing I noticed today, and John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is the cold tires really made more of an impact in this race. I think probably for the first chicane going all the way into the back chicanes. When did you start to see your tires warming up so that you could take those turns a little bit faster and be more consistent with speed?
It was actually when whoever was in first started pulling away.
Okay.
Just realised obviously they've got a bit of heat in them. I was only a second or so behind at that point, so I thought, well, if they're pushing, I can start pushing a bit more.
Jason and Corey, did you see the same thing? Were your tires colder longer today? Did this track have more of an impact on cold tires, or cold tires have more of an impact on this track?
It's interesting you call it out. Usually in the previous three races or so, tires started to go off halfway through the race, and I did notice race pace. I think I was in the 44s in the beginning. It only degraded down to like low 45s, mid 45s, which wasn't a whole lot. Previous races, they heated up more. We were losing a good second half, 2 seconds a lap. So yeah, it did seem to. The track conditions were definitely a little bit better today.
Now, looking forward, we have .conf coming up in the next couple of weeks. I know we've talked a bit about what we've been most excited about for this year of conf, but overall, what's kind of been your favorite experience of conf past, and what are you interested in seeing how they handle that this year? Jason?
Sure. Well, I've been with Splunk over 10 years, so I've seen a lot of confs.
Yeah.
There's probably too many memories to share. I think it was 2016 conf. We had Splunk branded Ford spec Mustang, where we were collecting some telemetry data. I was fortunate enough to drive that car several times at various racetracks, including Laguna Seca, where we just raced a couple days ago. So I remember just being able to kind of host that booth a little bit and talk a little bit about the motorsport industry in comparison to Splunk, which was super fun. And you can never customer keynote sessions. I always enjoy. I love hearing how customers rely on Splunk as a critical application. And then the parties. I mean, you have to enjoy the parties, right? Splunk definitely knows how to throw on a good party. So if there's a way we could do that virtually this year too, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Party at Corey's.
Come on with it.
That's right.
What about you, Corey?
How about you?
So my favorite memory by far, and I think I've been to 6 or 7 confs so far, and my favorite memory still is last year pulling up in that RV and the experience of having spent 2 weeks with you, Brett, and Kyle, doing something completely ridiculous but completely fun, and then seeing honestly the reception that people had for the idea for what we were doing and the questions they asked and the ways that they provided ways like, oh, if you do it next year, you could totally do this. It just spawned such fun conversations and it really highlighted what is, I think, one of the most attractive things about, Splunk in general, which is the community, right? It's just, there's such a good just vibe. People want to be excited about the things they're doing. They want to share their story. So that having a visceral experience of doing something that embodied it and seeing the response from the community was just, it was top of the top. And seeing our names on the keynote stage was pretty awesome, highlighting what we did. That felt pretty darn good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, John, how about you?
I've actually never been to a conf.
Oh,
I've only been at Splunk for just over 2 years, and I'm pretty far removed from customers. So we don't really get the opportunity to go out.
Well, You know what? This year being virtual, you'll get to attend all of it, just like the rest of us.
See you this year.
We'll have to figure out the virtual party there. Yeah.
That's right.
So, as awesome as your win was today, we have another race tomorrow, right? So what are the three of you going to do? What are some tips that you might want to share to get ready for this next race tomorrow? Because we're racing at Le Mans tomorrow. So you got to bring it yet again. This is only going into day 5. So Jason, what are you going to do to prepare for this race?
Well, first and foremost, I'll just, in the spirit of transparency, mention I have done 24-hour endurance races at Le Mans on iRacing. So
we're toast. We'll talk to him again tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow, yeah.
So I guess I'll just try to tap into that experience. I've never done it in the Mclaren. I've done it in the Porsche 919 and also in a Ferrari 488. Oh, sorry, a Porsche RSR. So we'll see how it goes. I'll just do my best. So
far, that's turned out to be pretty okay, my friend.
What about you, Corey? You going to drink some water, hydrate?
I'm hydrating. So honestly, I'm probably I forgot to put my comfy seat cushion in because I'm about 6 inches too big for my racing cockpit. So I'm going to remember to get my comfy cushion to put it back in place because it's pretty uncomfortable today. It's not, I think tomorrow's going to be, one of our longest races. So it's 45 minutes in the seat. So honestly, it's about comfort, having some, water nearby so you can, on those long straightaways. Now we are running the historic version, so we won't have the chicanes in the Mulsanne Straits. So it's going to be a long straightaway. So you have plenty of time to get some water. But man, I tell you what, that's one I'm gonna put some practice laps in first thing in the morning because you got to remember those quick sections of turns sort of as you're coming back up the back end. So I'm hydration, comfort, and a little bit of practice.
And stretch your hammy.
That's right.
It is a contact sport. Hey, John, and what about you? What are you going to do to prepare for your next race?
Just put in some practice laps, I think.
All right. Practice is makes perfect, right? Well, gentlemen, congratulations on 1, 2, and 3. And thank you so much for tuning in today. And we'll see you tomorrow.